Hi, everybody. Today is Tuesday, May 8th. Welcome to the SIG Testing Weekly meeting. I'm Aaron Kirkenberger, your host for today's meeting. On today's agenda, I just wanted to give those of us who are at KubeCon EU a chance to debrief real quick if there's any interest. We're going to have a brief chat about Dockerfile versus Bazel for at least building and PROW images, maybe a broader just philosophical discussion. And before I press the record button, we were talking about a bunch about sort of where pod utils is at. So I think it would actually be better to start back there real quickly. So what I heard was that it's pretty much ready to go, and we're ready to live in a world where we never write a job that uses Bootstrap ever again. And we now want to start taking jobs that either weren't written with Bootstrap in the first place and augment them with pod utils, such as some of the jobs that Feda wrote, or take existing jobs that were written with Bootstrap and replace them to use pod utils. And Steve, you were saying something about turning off cloning as a first step on that.
Yeah, so I think there's two things that, well, the one thing that I think we do need to get finished, so because there's more moving pieces right now, there's more logs to keep a hold of, and one single test log isn't enough anymore. I have a PR which Nicholas LGTM'd for a controller that we can run, and the controller just uploads all of the container logs. That stuff gets pushed to GCS, and that's exposed. Also, the other update is in all the various places that we have a logs link in deck, we need to go make sure that we're passing the right container name. As soon as that happens, every job, like the UX should be no different. And then we, yeah, we can optionally, we could add an option to turn off the cloning step, because for periodic jobs that are maintenance based, like the periodic retester, there's no code under test per se, so they're not really cloning anything. I think it might work if you just...
It should see that there's no pull refs. Could it just not do anything in that scenario?
Let's try it. Yeah, it'll probably do nothing. Put down a successful JSON output, we call it a day. But let's try it. It might not work.
Okay, so these are sort of like nice to have ideas that we could tackle in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but you're going to be out for the next 2 weeks. So do we have issues for this sort of stuff, or are these just like, if we find time, we want to keep pushing them forward? If you are saying stuff, you are muted, Steve. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, they're all being tracked. There's issues in test infra. I'll link them in the chat. The two outstanding things that I think would be really nice for UX are pretty much almost finished. I'll try to get that stuff at least to a mergeable state before Friday, and if I can't, I'll ask Nicholas to push it through.
All right. Cool.
Steve, what's the motivation for having a controller do the upload instead of having the jobs do it?
So it's funny you ask. You and Ben convinced me that was a good idea like 2 months ago in a conversation. And I think the biggest thing was having jobs own their own uploads. Basically, in every case where the job is malformed or has to exit early, we lose artifacts. So I think the conversation was let's proxy. We could proxy through the artifact upload through a server to GCS and stream it, and then also we could have the logs be uploaded externally.
Are we still uploading everything from an artifacts directory?
Right. So yeah, right now the PR that adds the controller, all the controller does is it watches for pods created by PROW that are referenced to a PROW job, and then when a container in that pod transitions into the complete state, we push the logs up to GCS, but then all the artifacts and like test stuff is still pushed from the test container. And I'll link the umbrella issue too. So in the umbrella issue, I tried to sort of outline what you and Ben had been talking about, and that would be like the next steps for that.
All right.
Are we pushing from both the job and the controller then?
Right now, yes, but in the future, hopefully just the controller.
Okay.
All right, I assigned you a place in the meeting notes to paste that link, Steve.
Okay.
Okay, so next up, hooray, we're all back from KubeCon EU now. I'm wearing the shirt I presented my talk in. I can see Cole is wearing the shirt he presented his talk in. Go Team Left Shark. Overall, I think the talks were really well attended. I know that I had the room where we had the new contributor summit, and it was filled pretty much all the way to the back, which I didn't expect for a talk right after the keynote. And then the talk that Sen and Cole gave that got more into the detailed nitty-gritty of like how Prow does what it does and why we're so enthusiastic about Tide and keep talking about it like it's the second coming. That I know that got picked up by the CNCF as like one of the highlight moments of the third day. So just wanted to like give a big shout out to them. Also outdoing my This Is Fine dog usage. I didn't realize there were so many other This Is Fine dog images available. I don't know if any of you are curious to see anything from the slides. I posted videos of the recordings. The whole conference's videos have been posted online. And I also posted links to our slides in the meeting agenda notes. I would say, if anything, the one biggest takeaway I had in looking through things for my docs is that I finally found the graph that proves that there's no way we would be attaining the merge velocity that we have for Kubernetes if we weren't doing batch merging. Like, it's just theoretically impossible. So merging things in batches is definitely saving our lives, and I was pleased to hear that we're talking about having Tide sort of vary the size of batches it's using to help our merge velocity going forward. And the other thing that I saw, which y'all are probably all aware of because you've been helping with PRs into the config for Tide and Prow, but we have a lot more repos other than just Kubernetes that are using Prow for their pre-submit jobs, which I take as a sign that we've reached some level of maturity project-wise where folks other than just the folks in the Kubernetes project see this as a useful thing to help merge their code. So yay, Prow. I also think we kind of need like a better Prow logo than the one we have, for what it's worth. I know we have like these two circles in front of the Kubernetes logo that I think are supposed to represent like the wake at the front of the boat, which is what Prow is. But I think we can do better than that. I had fun like recreating that logo out of Google Slides slide art though. It was good times.
We should ask Tim Hawkin to do something.
There you go.
For what it's worth too, Aaron, we've got Prow running now for like OVN. We have it running for Project Atomic stuff, like a bunch of other organizations as well. So. Yeah,
I did get a chance to talk to Michael. How do you pronounce his last name? Kargakis?
Yeah, Kargakis.
Kargakis. He's super enthusiastic about Prow. He said he's given like 2 or 3 presentations already. He advocates for it as much as possible within Red Hat, and he'd really like to work with us to help advocate for it more outside of just OpenShift and Kubernetes, which I'm a huge fan of. So
yeah, I mean, I think people, some of our teams in India picked it up as well, and we also have buy-in now from the Azure Container Service.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know Azure was using that. That's awesome.
Hopefully that was fine to say in a recorded meeting.
No, actually, you're right. I think I heard him say he had been poking at somebody in Microsoft.
Yeah, that was where some of the questions about multi-tenancy came in.
Okay, that makes sense. So just like at some point going forward, I think it'd be cool to have more of a roadmap for Prow. I know I personally have done like not the greatest job of aggregating all of the various docs and proposals that have come across the mailing list. And I think it could be useful to try and look at this meeting as an opportunity to discuss sort of a more forward-looking, like where is Prow headed and how can we do more milestone-y type things. I'm not sure. Because it seems like it's really, really close to the cusp of turning into something that's more product-like. I know it was something that Sen and Cole talked about being on the SIG testing roadmap, where if we can get to the point where test grid is open source, then and if we can augment the way we display artifacts either with Deck, or we can find a way to do a lot of what Kubernetes does with something that can run on a Kubernetes cluster, we can sort of provide the whole stack that we use to run the project today out of the box on a Kubernetes cluster.
And then we just have to compete with the new GitHub status API.
I'm not sure if there's anything that's necessarily preventing us from rewiring Prow as an app. I know I had asked about it in the channel a while back, and it seems like, if nothing else, like it would give us more tokens to play with. We get 20 tokens per user in the org that we're a member of, so ballpark, we'd get like another 2,000, 3,000 tokens, at least in Kubernetes, which could be pretty cool. Anyway, that's like, I don't know, the conference was roughly the same size as KubeCon. It was really great to see everybody there, but I was just in like helping give talks or helping put together talks all day, so I didn't actually get to see anything. I don't know if Cole, you had anything you wanted to say about your experiences over at KubeCon, or...
I went to a lot of good talks on continuous deployment solutions for Kubernetes. So I have some ideas about what we can do for Prow to hopefully get something like that. Most of the solutions just work around monitoring a image repository for a tag to be updated, and then deploying whenever that tag's updated. But something like that would fit in with our existing CI.
Yeah, that's right, because we were talking about how we do the CI, we just need the CD portion of it, and it seems like there were a couple things out there that were scoped pretty much just at the CD portion, which was useful for us.
We're doing the CD portion. Which turns out today didn't build.
So, speaking of that, you want to...
Yeah. I guess like philosophically, I think we need to think about like what kind of interface are we exposing? Because it's funny, like we're in a state today where master of test infra, if you use like the bog standard Go tool chain, Prow doesn't compile. And if you want to build the images, you get a different result than the ones that are actually being used in production for the Google Prow cluster. If you use the Docker files. And so I guess there's kind of a dichotomy between, as a naive developer showing up thinking, oh, okay, this is Go, I'm going to use Go build or Go install. These are container images. There's Docker files checked into the repo. I'll use Docker build. Like if I showed up as a new contributor and tried to do any of that today, I would get something that was not working at all. And I think that we should probably figure out like a more cohesive end result here. One of the comments that Christoph made on Slack, like for better or for worse, I do think right now Docker files are like the most common currency for declaring what a container looks like. So on that front, I think we should keep them around. If it's possible, I think we should try to get Prow or try to get Bazel to do what the Docker files were doing. And if it's as simple as, changing some paths over, I don't think that's like a hugely important. Like I think it's fine if we, if the Bazel image building stuff for Go has a opinionated place where it's going to put Go things, we can go ahead and update our Docker files to do that. I don't think we need to like spend a million years making sure Bazel does something that it's not used to doing, but we should at least keep those in sync. That's my opinion.
I mean, one thing I feel like the larger problem is, especially if we are wanting other organizations to use it, is I really feel like we should be publishing images that other people can use. And I feel like, I feel like that would solve a lot of the problems, as if I could just write or customize the getting started YAML and, point my container to use the Prow image and then go from there. I feel like that would be useful. I think it's unfortunate that we sort of make everybody recompile the.
So as far as I know, the images that you use are publicly readable. Like I can pull them down. I don't know if I have any special access. I don't think I do.
You don't have to build it.
Okay, I think at some point well, maybe my information is super out of date because I think at some point that was not the case.
So,
I I can
I mean,
always,
I think that's super useful to have them available. I'm not sure that. So I think that's kind of orthogonal to the problem as well. Because I think we, like, for instance, on my end of things, like, it's like it would be nice if we could build a container based on RHEL. It would be nice, like, because there is a CD pipeline that starts with Git and does the image building itself, pushes the images to registries that we have.
right.
Not having to like go out to your CDN and grab your image might be nice. So I think absolutely having like a canonical place to go pull images from, perfect, but also being able to do it yourself shouldn't be terribly painful.
So I feel like the more fundamental issue we have here is that I hear, or I get the sense that there's a desire to make Bazel the one true way to run and compile and build and test and do all the things within the test infra repo. And that the clearest way, the best way to make it clear that Bazel is the one and only way that we support doing things is to remove any of the other ways of doing things. And this bothers me a little bit because the other ways of doing things, like the standard Go tool chain of Go build, Go install, or using Docker files and Docker build, are more well understood to new contributors. If the repo adopts a stance that we're only using Bazel for everything, even if we have really excellent, clear, concise readmes, which we don't, that like made it super obvious that it was just Bazel and here's how you do each and everything, I still feel like the repo would gain a reputation of being a little more difficult to contribute to because you have to learn this other super weird way of doing things that's unique pretty much just to this one project. There aren't too many other projects out there that use Bazel. That said, I also get that this repo is an experiment for like proving that Bazel can be used to do all of those things. And in my limited experience, it's been working very well there. It pretty much just works on my MacBook, which is cool. But like, this is kind of the same problem the Kubernetes repo is facing, where I don't think Red Hat will ever accept that Bazel is the one true way of building Kubernetes, that there always has to be like a more open source, community friendly, more commonly accepted tool chain used to build Kubernetes. And the fact that we kind of have these two alternate paths can create issues where like apparently we weren't running make quick release, which doesn't use Bazel to build things, but our CI does use like Bazel to build things. So something got checked in which broke one path but didn't show up because we were testing the other path, right? So I hear that like two paths ain't so great, but I'm wondering if there's a way where we could start with Bazel as the canonical source, but make sure that those more like friendly open source ways are either generated from Bazel or at least covered under CI so we know that our practices aren't breaking them. Does that make any sense?
I think generating with Bazel is not a bad idea. I think that would be a good way to keep the Docker files and everything in sync.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we don't have something automating that, it's just not going to stay in sync.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing, but with the reference back to the main repo, which is there is a long history of Bazel and Make getting out of sync with each other in Kubernetes. And whether it's, okay, Make Bazel release doesn't include these artifacts, or Make Bazel release is broken because it includes this version of kubeproxy, but Make release hasn't caught up to that yet. They get out of sync quite often.
But behind the scenes, Bazel should just be making a Docker file. Is there?
The images are basically just glorified tarballs, and so there's no reason to use the Docker daemon to create a tarball.
Well, we said Docker files, not Docker daemon.
Yeah, I mean, we're not using the Docker daemon as well.
Script for creating a tarball.
Yeah. I think, and so I guess this is one of the questions that I had as well, because like specifically with the Docker file, like I know on our side of things, there's maybe like 3 or 4 different image building tools out there in the ecosystem, each one of them trying to approach, a different problem and solve it in a different way. And one of the things that each one of those tools has been very careful to do is to honor the Docker file, make sure that users that are switching to use the tool or switching away from using the tool, they still have that artifact and they can take it with them to whatever image building process they want, and it doesn't lock them in. And so I guess, is that at all something that the Bazel authors care about?
Are you saying, with the idea, I mean, I think I mean, is it what, like create, you know, if I have a Go image that I can have Go image spit out a Docker file? Or are you saying that have the Go image rule work off of a, you know, have to read a Docker file for input?
Either or, right?
I think it's more common the latter than the former, but the former would also be nice.
Either of those would just make sure that we have, you know, the easy solution that we want, where we just use a Bazel rule and it just works. And then we just want to make sure that we have some sort of Dockerfile artifact that people can use if they don't want to have to go through Bazel.
Yeah, I just, from the perspective of bringing on board new contributors, a lot of what I heard, you know, I inhabit more the mentorship space in the conference track, and like a lot of people are like, where should I go to contribute new code? And I really want to advocate how like Prow is an awesome code base that seems to adopt a lot of principles that work well with sort of the shape of a cloud native and Kubernetes centric application. But if they can't use the tool chain that they're familiar with, if they have to learn all this extra stuff, I can't in good conscience send new contributors to that code base. And so I'd love for us to make sure that, you know, the simple Go tool chain, and even if they're like, whatever, I don't think it's too crazy for somebody on their laptop to use a Docker daemon to build an image, even if it is ultimately a glorified tarball, and there are many ways of building without the Docker daemon. Like the Docker file as the currency of describing what a container should look like, I think is still a pretty valid point.
To me, it seems like the overarching question is, are we comfortable, you know, asking people to use Bazel? And if, you know, I mean, maybe we shouldn't be using Bazel at all. But, you know, if to me, it seems like there should be, you know, if there is a place where we're comfortable asking people to use Bazel, it seems like Test Infra is a good place to do that. And if, I mean, but yeah, I do think, you know, I think me having worked at Google for 8 years and already being familiar with Bazel, like, you know, or Blade, or whatever, the internal version, like Bazel is intimately comfortable for me. So it's sort of a little bit hard for me to understand, you know, exactly how challenging it is to install Bazel and get used to it or whatever.
Yeah, I think I'm like less interested in specifically what tool you're using, but just the ability to interoperate. And I guess that's kind of the biggest difference I see between Bazel from what I've seen. And I honestly, I don't know if, you know, like it's very surprising to me right now that using the Go standard toolchain, I can't compile Test Infra, but using Bazel I can. Like that's a really surprising thing that I really didn't expect to happen. And I think on a lot of other repos, you have, you know, make targets, or you can come and bring your own container image build system, and the Docker file is just a rough spec of how to do it. What I see with the Bazel approach is you have to do this one way, and we don't really have any other option for you. And I think that's the part that's a little bit, there's more friction there than I think there needs to be.
Why we can't use like Go import? What do you, like, where's the skew?
You can't use like Go Get, right? Like a vast majority of other folks who are wanted to like do extensions or superpositions of something, you can't Go Get something, right? You can't do that in the main repo either. Or you can't Go Get Kubernetes, it just implodes, right?
Yeah.
And you can do that on almost every other Go project that exists, right?
What fails though? What doesn't work about
So
today, Go install fails on some.
There's different problems. In the core repo, that doesn't have anything to do with Bazel. It's mostly around the fact that we generate a bunch of code and are wanting, like, I feel like in the main repo, the fact that Go Get doesn't work is sort of a larger conversation. And right, yeah, and the fact that we have all these weird staging repos.
Yeah, and the staging hackery for Go Get was pretty huge too. Right now in Test Infra, it was some pruning issue, took out Prometheus or protobuf packages that when you go install, it just falls over.
I think that's like a bug of today, as opposed to, I suspect like last week you could go install.
Yeah, no, I found the commit that broke it, but like I think, you know, having in CI each approach would continue to make us like wary of the fact that we are supporting both. I think, like Aaron was saying.
To me, what I would like is, you know, maybe if we could have, to me, I guess the thing that I like is about the Go image rules is that it's sort of clean and it prevents people from putting too much logic into the Docker file. Because like really all that we want to do is get a sane base image and compile the binary and put that into the image. And I feel like when you give someone, more power, they're going to tend to make it really complicated. And so I would be attracted more to the idea of like having figuring out a way to have the rule generate the Docker file so that we know that what we are generating with the Go image rule is the same as what you would do if you ran the Docker file.
Yeah, I mean that might make sense. It might get a little bit complicated because I think right now the Docker files, what they expect, the way that they're written right now for Prow is, I have the compiled binary available. I'm going to copy into the root of the file system, and I'm done. Generating one Docker file that does all of that in a way that the resulting container image only has the compiled binary, doesn't have the Go runtime, doesn't have any of the compiled artifacts, like that might be tricky.
I think you can do that with multi-stage.
Yeah, you could do multi-stage builds. But I guess and so for instance, I guess I could talk about how we do it. Like we have a separate approach that's not quite multi-stage. But again, like what we're able to do is provide data to the final container image build that is the compiled artifact that we actually want to put into the container image. And then we explicitly reference the Docker file that's present in the test info repo to say, do this container image build from the upstream. And that one, as it's defined, says, I have the binary, I'm going to put it here, I'm going to call it a day. And so that way, we can provide the data some other way, whether that's a multi-stage or whatever we're doing. But then that API interface of the final container just has the compiled binary here. We still adhere to that. And so I don't know if generating from Bazel, we could, still have something clean like that.
I'm not sure either, but I'm just thinking, I totally hear that this is a much less gnarly repo than Kubernetes. So what better but it's still got a lot of code and it's fast moving. So what better repo to prove that Bazel works? I just feel that we as a group haven't done a great job of educating the community on how to use Bazel to do all the things. And there is an expectation from community members that the standard Go tool chain could work, that you could go get things, and that you could Docker build things. I don't know, Steve, your case sounds it sounds doable. But so I'm just wondering, if in the short term we can find ways to sort of continue to support those standard things, but we do have the longer term goal of maybe we could say that Bazel's the canonical way of doing it if we can make sure that interop is possible.
I mean, I think adding a CI job that does the build using the Go tool chain, I think would be pretty simple.
Most of our problems. We can worry about automating the generation of the Docker files later, but as long as we at least know when we're breaking, the other path, that's going to be almost good enough, probably.
Yeah, maybe just edit as a post submit. And honestly, those Docker files, I don't think they've ever changed. I think they've been committed once and never touched. So yeah. I think the generation is nice, and I see why it would be valuable to have that in sync all the time. But at the same time, I think it's not a huge amount of tech debt if we just say, for now, let's just bring it into sync and then deal with it later.
We want the CI jobs anyways, I think.
I mean, something I would be, I'm curious about is, is the idea of making test infra, sort of having a dependency on Bazel, is that a non-starter, or is that a conversation we could eventually have, and what would we need to have that?
I think that's a conversation we can eventually have, personally speaking. I just think we're not there today. A little more forward thought needs to be put into that.
At the same time, having test infra rely on Bazel exclusively, and as an example, not allow the standard Go toolchain to compile Prow, I'm almost erring on the side of non-starter for that one. That seems a little crazy.
Well, I think if it would result in the standard Go toolchain not working,
right,
I would agree with you. But I am hopeful there's a happy medium.
Yeah. Definitely, having some way of making sure that it keeps working, but making it very much expected that Bazel is the normal developer interop with the repo. That seems reasonable.
All right. Thanks.
Cool. Cool. Well, as evidenced by the Google folks getting kicked out of their room, I think we are over time for today. So thank you everybody for joining. Happy Tuesday.
Yep.